rock and roll whenever you feel like it, Mike.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay. All right. So 2-1 rate buy down. I don't think this will take too long. I just wanted to run through really the technical piece of it, how it works, how you calculate the subsidy, and then show a couple of the marketing pieces. So this is a flyer that we have for the consumer, and we can co-brand any of this, anything that we share, we can put you on here. It's the 2-1 rate buy down. It has some similar qualities to an adjustable rate mortgage in that the payment is adjusting a couple of times, but it has the security of a fixed rate. Actually, on the 2-1 rate buy down, the actual interest rate is not even adjusting at all. It's actually staying at the note rate. And so the interest is still accruing at whatever the current note rate is. But the first year payment is based 2% below the note rate. And then the second year is 1% below the note rate. So that's why they call it a 2-1 rate buy downs, where you're getting the 2% below and then 1% below. And then that third year, it goes to the final note rate, the payment, and it stays there for the remainder of the loan. Okay, and then I have a calculator, and I'll share this with you as well, so that if you ever want to run the numbers yourself, you can do that. In this scenario, I just used a $550,000 purchase price with 5% down, and that would make the loan amount $522,500. All right, so let's just say that today's going interest rate is 5.875%. The 30-year fixed payment would be $3,090 a month. And that does not include the PMI or the taxes and insurance. That's just strictly the PI payment. The first year, the effective rate payment would be based off of the 3.875, 2% below. Payments $2,456. And so that would be $633 a month lower than where it would have been on just a traditional 30-year fixed program. Over 12 months, that's a difference of $7,605. So there would be a subsidy needed to cover that shortfall for the first year of $7,600. The second year, we would go to 4.875%, 1% below the note rate. It's $2,765 a month, and you're still $325 lower than the note rates on a traditional 30-year. Over 12 months, that's a subsidy needed of $3,908. So you add those together, and you're going to get a total subsidy of $11,513 that's needed to cover that shortfall in the payment. Because the interest rate's always at the 5.875, even though the payment is lower for the first 2 years, that interest is still accruing. It's got to be paid by somebody. And the only way that these can be paid is either by the lender or by the seller. The buyer is not permitted to pay it. So this came about because we had real estate partners with listings offering points to pay, like up to 2%, sometimes even 3% to pay to the buyer's closing costs. And we were trying to figure out what was the best way to help the buyer who is so concerned about interest rate and payment right now. And so that's what got us thinking about the 2-1 rate buy down again, which has been around for decades, but just hasn't been used lately because interest rates have been so low. So here we are with this program. Now, this 2-1 rate buy down can only be used on conventional loans and on FHA loans. So no jumbo and no VA. Okay. And then I had mentioned that it can be paid by the seller or by the lender. So the way that it's been paid by the lender in the past is by increasing the interest rate. So as you have like that yield spread premium, kind of like how you do like a low cost or a no cost loan, you could bump the rate up and have a bigger credit to pay for the buyer's closing costs. However, there's something going on in the industry right now. It's called margin compression, and there's not as much yield spread available as there has been in the past. Now that might change in the future, but right now it's not even a viable option because you may have noticed that with some of your buyers, like in some cases, it's impossible to even get to a par rate like in most cases, the buyers are actually paying some type of a partial discount point or points right now. And so you can see how it would be hard to even to push the rate up to get more of a credit to cover that $11,500. So right now, even though technically it's allowed, it has not been a viable option. Only the seller option has been the way to go. All right. And then the way that this works technically on the back end is that there is an escrow account held created, kind of like your impounds for taxes and insurance, how the bank holds back taxes and insurance and pays them. The same thing happens here. That 11,500 is held in an impound account, and it covers that difference in payment over the first 24 months. If the buyer refinances within that period of time, whatever's left over in that escrow account of that 11,500 gets applied towards their principal payment reduction. So the buyer doesn't lose the money if they end up refinancing. And many of these buyers that use this are going into this because they are planning on interest rates coming down at some point. So, I mean, we want to refinance them, obviously, as soon as it makes sense. All right. Any questions so far?
Very helpful. You've answered a lot of my questions.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so I have another image to share here, and this first column is just the traditional $550,000 purchase price with 5% down. So just, you know, nothing. This is just the vanilla deal, 5.875% rate. The second column is showing you with a $12,000 seller credit what a permanent rate buy down would look like. And this is kind of more traditionally what we have done with seller concessions in the past, and really what would need to be done on a jumbo situation. Since the 2-1 rate buy down isn't available, you could do a permanent rate buy down. So with that kind of credit, you would get the rate about 0.75% lower than where the note rate would be, which would be about $245 a month lower in payment. The next column is using that credit in the 2-1 buy down, which we talked about already. You know, the interest rate, the first year effective payment is off of the 3.875, giving you a $633 difference in payment. And then the final column is a $12,000 price reduction. If you just, you know, as a listing agent, reduce the price by $12,000, it would only help the buyer by $70 a month. So just a good visual to show the difference in when it's all about payment to a buyer, the best way to use those monies. Now, it's not necessarily the best financial decision long-term if you were to look out 10 years or something and you were to use the permanent rate buy down, but that's not really what we're focused on here. We're focused on payment with the buyer. So that gives them the biggest payment relief over the first 2 years. Okay. And then I have one more image I would like to share with you. And this is, so the agents that have properties where the seller is motivated to sell, we've been using the 2-1 rate buy down in a marketing piece. So we can just pull all of this right off the MLS listing, all the language, you know, your description, the pictures. And in this case, the agent said, you know, we could drop the price $10,000 or we could offer a concession. And we put together a flyer that shows that using the $10,000 on 2-1 rate buy down, you can see it dropped the payment about almost $550 a month the first year on this scenario. And then went up to, you know, 27 to 66, still saving, you know, almost $300 a month the second year. So this is just to help attract buyers to the listing, because we think there's this is a great opportunity right now in the listing appointments to talk about different strategies as they come up. And there's just something that it's a little bit softer than a price reduction to talk about offering a seller concession. And then also the neighbors do like it too, because everyone wants to keep the values as high as possible. So if we keep the values up and use the concessions for the buy down, it might be a conversation with a seller that maybe they're not having with other realtors. And we know how important that is, just to even have a tool or a conversation that your competition might not be using. So I think it's important just to keep this in mind, not only for buyer conversion and attraction of buyer business and leads, but also to help in the listing presentation and with your sellers. And of course, anything can be co-branded and marketed with you. Okay. That is pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Rhonda will send you all of these images and the calculator. Do you feel like you got all of your questions answered?
Excellent. Yes, I'm excited for this, and I sure did. And I just had a listing in which we offered this concession, and it was utilized by the buyer, so it was very effective. I'm glad to know the nuts and bolts though of how that's the subsidy and that's where the monies are going. I didn't totally have the details on that, so this is great.
Okay, perfect. And I don't know where you are on that transaction of yours, or if you've already had to do this, but we do need something in the contract mentioning that whatever percentage of the closing costs are of the concession is going towards a 2-1 rate buy down. And that needs to go over as part of the contract when we order the appraisal, because we do need the appraiser just to make a comment within it. Like there has to be language. It's just like a one-liner in the appraisal as well too. So anyways, with us anyways, and from what we understand, it is a Fannie Freddie guideline. You just can't have like a blanket closing cost, like 2% to be paid towards the buyer's closing costs. We actually needed it to kind of lay it out that whatever percent was to a 2-1 buy down, so that the appraiser had that information.
That's really good to know. We had it in the contract. I think it was, I can't remember if it was line 80, where it actually specifies towards, that's interesting, buyer's fees, but we didn't specify the 2-1 buy down. Interesting.
Have you closed on it yet?
We close in 2 weeks, and the appraisal's already gone through and cleared. Okay. So be interesting.
Underwriting, I mean, I don't want you to like open something that's not going to be addressed. Maybe they follow guidelines differently, or I don't know. It's kind of like banks it's new to banks again. Like a lot of people with it. Like we actually kind of had to fumble through the first one ourselves because it had been so many years since I had done one. But we pulled up the guidelines, and it does say that all parties have to be aware. And the way we interpreted that is that the appraiser needs to make comment of it, the seller needs to be aware of it, that it was a 2-1 buy down, and the buyer, obviously. So it was a simple fix. It was just an addendum with like one sentence, but we did have the appraiser amend that appraisal and put that language in there in order to get it funded. So that could come up later. I don't know if you want to bring it up to the lender to have them double check with underwriting, or just deal with it if it does come up. But I'd be curious. If you think about it, let me know what happens with that.
Well, and especially when I represent the seller. So if it was,
you really don't want to reach out to the lender and talk about it.
Right. But if I was representing the buyer, that's really helpful to know. But there's some specific language in the contract where we did specify. Anyways, I'm going to go double look at that. So very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I know you're busy, so thanks for jumping on. I appreciate your time. And if there's anything that we can help you with, just let us know.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye, Rhonda.
Bye-bye.